in 2023, I came back from a trip to Europe, and because we were so poor, we didn't eat that much food. So I ended up coming back from that trip having lost 5 kilos. I went there at about 73 kilos. I came back at 68 kilos. And that is the lightest I had been in over 3 to 4 years. So I came back, I felt emaciated. I felt so skinny. And when I went to the gym for the first time in about 2 months, I was so weak. I was used to pressing the 36 kilo dumbbells on incline bench press, and I came back and I could barely do the 26s. So I saw red. I was like, shit, I'm so weak. I need to do something about this. And of course, the traditional advice out there is when you're feeling weak, when you're feeling skinny, when you're feeling emaciated, you should enter a bulk. You should start eating more food so that you can put on size, put on muscle. And I wanted to do that so I could get back to where I used to be. So that's exactly what I did. I started bulking. So I made a conscious effort to just try and eat more food. I wasn't tracking my calories because I used to be skinny fat. I knew that it was so easy for me to just eat all the calories in the world. I have no problem in being in a calorie surplus because I love to eat. So I would just have the meals that I would normally have, but then try and eat more food. What I would do was have my dinner, but then after dinner, just start eating more food from the pantry, from the fridge, and just see whatever I could get my hands on and scoff it down my throat. Looking back, what I was really doing was using bulking as an excuse to just eat whatever I wanted, including all of these garbage foods like chocolate, chips, and biscuits. Because I started out skinny fat and was kind of obsessed with losing fat, I'd become very avoidant of those types of junk foods. And now, finally having an opportunity, a reason to actually start eating them again, that was the reason I allowed myself and justified it to myself to allow myself to eat the chips, the chocolate, the biscuits. But the funny thing is that even though I was eating more food, I was putting on weight. I got to my heaviest at 80 kilos. I've never been 80 kilos in my entire life. Yet I wasn't getting any stronger. I hadn't surpassed where I was before I had left to Europe by the time I was 80 kilograms. And you'd think that if you went from 68 kilos to 80 kilos, you would undoubtedly have put on strength and have gotten better muscle gains in the gym. But I literally didn't. I stayed at the same point, even worse off than I was pre going to Europe on my trip. And all I had to show for it was extra fat on my body. I'd put on 12 kilos of fat for literally no reason. Mentally, this kind of stuffed me up because I was looking worse and was used to looking pretty lean, pretty shredded. So now being in a position where I was so much worse off in my physique, it really took a toll on me mentally. There was this one time I went to the sauna with some of my friends. And of course in the sauna, you have no shirt on. And I really hated having to actually take my shirt off in that situation. I didn't look terrible, but I knew I'd looked better in the past. And it was so interesting because it was bringing back all of those insecurities that I had at school where I was skinny fat and hated having to take my shirt off in the change rooms or at the swimming carnivals in the pool. There was this other time I was at a music festival, and this is in the middle of summer. So most people have their shirts off if you're a guy. And I mentally had the perception of myself that I was one of those guys that would always walk around with their shirts off, looking lean, shredded, muscular, and vascular. But at that point in time, I was 78 kilos. And so I actually didn't have the shreds. I wasn't lean. And I wasn't able to as comfortably take my shirt off in that situation. And I remember seeing some other guy who was literally shredded to the bone. And I was like, shit, that should be me. And I got pissed off in that moment, looking at someone else who was way more shredded, way more jacked, looked 100 times better than me. And that really did my head in. Throughout this period of time where I was bulking, I also felt so much lower energy as well. It's funny because when people say they're cutting and restricting their calorie intake, they say they lose a lot of energy, feel tired all the time, and have no desire to train. And it's funny because that's exactly how I felt bulking. So I was reading through my journal just before recording this video, and I was reading the entries from that period of time where I was bulking and got up to 80 kilos. And the entries would just say, I feel so tired today. I feel so lack of energy today. I feel like shit. I read this one entry, which was like, I woke up today and it was so hard to wake up. I just got angry at my alarm going off and I felt terrible. So it's crazy that you can eat all this extra food, but then actually feel worse off because of it and have no results in the gym and literally just look worse. So the reason this happened was because I was just using bulking as an excuse, as a coping mechanism to allow myself to eat junk food. In these processed foods, the ingredients that go into them are so terrible. They cook your internal system. They make you low energy. They make you tired all the time. They make it so you have no desire to go to the gym and train and push yourself really hard. It makes it so whenever you wake up in the morning, you just feel tired and you don't want to get out of bed. And of course, it's messing with your hormones. So if you're a man, testosterone is so important in building muscle and losing fat. And when you are constantly eating processed foods with these harmful ingredients in them, you are lowering your testosterone levels, which inevitably makes it so hard for you to actually put on muscle and lose fat. And that was probably a huge reason why I saw all the fat gain in the world, but no muscle or strength gains, despite eating all of these extra calories. And it's so annoying because the foods that you think are conducive to building muscle and losing fat are these types of processed foods that are labeled like high protein, low carb, low calorie foods. So you see these all the time in the supermarkets, in things like protein bars, protein microwave meals, protein snacks, protein ice cream, protein pizza. They all say high protein. This is good for muscle growth. This is good for fat loss. But it completely skims past all of the garbage ingredients that go into making these processed foods. Sure, it has high protein, but the protein comes from such a bad source. It has no micronutrient value in it. And there are seed oils, ingredients that are harmful to your endocrine system, that are disrupting your hormones, and that actually make it so much more difficult for you to build muscle and lose fat. So I think it's actually deceptive marketing. Now, if you want a full guide and video course as to how to properly eat to transform a skinny fat physique to an aesthetic physique, you can check out the first link in the description below. So the epiphany came to me when in 2024, I did this challenge called 75 Hard, which is where for 75 days, you do a challenge. As part of that challenge, there were two main components that allowed me to see the light. The first was that you had to stick to a diet. So that diet that I stick to was just eating clean, unprocessed foods. The foods that I ate had to be single ingredient. They couldn't be processed. The other main component was doing 2 workouts every day. So I started doing cardio. I'd normally just been doing weightlifting in the gym, but now I started going for runs and walks. So naturally, when you start eating clean foods, your calorie intake is going to drop. And of course, naturally, when you're doing more cardio, your calorie burn is going to rise. So throughout these 75 days, I was eating less calories, burning more calories. So I was in a calorie deficit. I was losing weight. I was losing fat. I got into the best physical shape I had ever got into in my entire life. And the funniest part is that over that 75 days, I saw crazy strength gains. To think that I had put on 12 kilos just a year before, going from 68 kilos to 80 kilos, and saw no strength gains, no muscle gains. But in a similar time frame, I probably dropped 5 kilos, went from 75 kilos to 70 kilos, yet got the strongest I'd ever been in my entire life. The strongest weight on weighted pull-ups, strongest weight on incline bench press, strongest bicep curls, you name it. I was getting PR after PR in the gym. And I wasn't bulking. I was literally in a crazy calorie deficit. I was getting shredded. So it was a complete contradiction to the traditional advice that's out there that says if you want to build muscle, put on size, you need to be bulking and being in a calorie surplus. My transformation over that 75 hard period is just a complete contradiction to all of that traditional advice. The reason is because if you just stick to eating clean and don't even worry about bulking or cutting, you naturally arrive at a calorie deficit. And you're also putting much cleaner ingredients into your body that are so much better for your hormones. Your testosterone levels rise when you're eating clean foods, as opposed to the processed garbage that goes into these high protein meals or whatever other junk food that you might be eating, like chips, like chocolate, like biscuits, or like any fast food, McDonald's, KFC, Krispy Kreme. When you just eat natural, clean, single ingredient foods, your body has so much more energy. You have more of a desire to train, to push yourself hard in the gym. And the recovery aspect of when you come back from the gym is also enhanced by the fact you're putting high quality food into your body. And so inevitably, you're going to actually pack on more muscle just by focusing on eating clean, as opposed to trying to increase your calorie intake to have extra energy to put on muscle. So the upshot is, you don't need to bulk. You just need to focus on eating clean. So if you learned anything from my story or this video, please consider subscribing. We're getting to 20K subs soon, and I'll see you in the next one.